Spags, we are back for part 2 of our Best Ball Mania 4 doubleheaders that we do every single Tuesday. We just drafted a team over on my channel, and here we are to battle it again in the Underdog streets.
You can see the screen here coming up. Best Ball Mania 4 coming up, of course, giving all the good entries here today on these streams with Pete. But of course, it is a day, Pete, where there have been some millionaire teams drafted in the past. And now we can add our teams, hopefully, to that really historic grouping there. King Capital, Pat Green, and me and you in the 3-hole today.
God bless America. And you at the 4, though, so we will be battling again. I do see some familiar names in here. Brendan, B. Spurf, of course. Sam Duell. Also, the Icon was just in our draft with us previously. I don't know if they are watching or just ripping off back-to-back Best Ball Mania drafts, but excited to battle it out and excited to be on the other side of the draft board for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, people were asking in the last stream, and I don't want to interrupt because I think you were making a point at the time, but your early picks here, when's the most recent early pick you've gotten? Because people are observing now that you're going a lot in that 10 to 12 hole, which is going to happen when you're streaming every draft.
The one I did have, so the draft was Sean last Wednesday. We got the 101. So we did get Justin Jefferson. But before that, I should update my sheet and see, but it was I'm probably like 80 to 90% like after 1-8 the past 20 drafts. So let's see. It would be very fun if Donkey Picks wanted to go like rogue and give me Jamar Chase at 3. That'd just be kind of a nice gift for me.
I think that'd be a generous thing here by a non-badge. Maybe you'll take Christian McCaffrey. That's a thing that happens now this time of draft season. Nope, never mind.
No, and because I'm often able to get McCaffrey at 1.5 and 1.6 in my rooms with Kupp and Tyreek Hill going off the board, I am going to just go ahead and take Kupp here and lock in that share. I was pretty heavy on Kupp for a while, and then because I had so few early slots, my exposure has come down. I'm down to like 10%, so I don't mind boosting up my Kupp exposure.
Yeah, I think I'm under on Kupp right now because I'm not getting a lot of 103s and 104s where he's there. I'm actually going to check my exposures, but I think I'm low on Kupp, 6.7% Kupp, and 14% Tyreek across everything. So I got to get some more Kupp in down the home stretch. And now's the time, Pete, where we have to actually start thinking about that a little bit more.
Is that just because of your randomization of draft slots, or have you been taking Hill over Kupp?
I think there was a period where I was going Hill a little bit over Kupp, but not enough, I think, for that to explain the rationale of why I'm so much higher. Because I like Kupp too. But I think I'm getting 101s or bust for the most part. And then I get, whoever's a fall or sometimes in the 5 or 6.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wonder if we'll see any movement on that. It seems like nothing's going to happen with the Tyreek Hill stuff. Yeah. So if people preferred Tyreek Hill to Kupp before, I didn't. I've been taking Kupp against Tyreek Hill, but it's now interesting that it snapped back because of that news story.
I mean, Tyreek saying he wants to go for 2,000 yards, and that's one of his goals. Obviously, the record by Calvin Johnson, I think, is 1964. So that's one where he's now talking publicly about it. And I just feel like Miami, Pete, I don't know if you feel differently, but I think they were kind of trendy to start the draft season, and now people have just kind of settled in and not as enthusiastic. But that offense last year was so much fun that I'm still taking Miami, and especially Miami-Baltimore for Week 17, pretty much everywhere I can.
No, I mean, if you look at where everyone's being drafted, the only enthusiasm is for Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, right? Yeah. There's no enthusiasm for the running backs. Even A-Chain, had slid a bit. Again, I hypothesized because the market's worried about Dalvin Cook blowing up that backfield. But Tua, remains cheap. One of the Tyreek or Hill or Waddle drafters will often select him at a discount. And no tight ends being taken, no third wide receivers. Like, the market is definitely like, this is the Hill and Waddle show, and we don't care about much else.
Yeah, which, is interesting. And Durham Smythe is a guy I feel like should start to get drafted at some point in tournaments, besides on DraftKings. I am on the clock here. This is an ugly spot to be in. Hate Saquon.
All the wide receivers flew off here.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's time to reach for DK. I am going to reach for DK here.
I am not going to reach for wide receivers. I'm going to take Tony Pollard here. My thing too is like, with Barkley threatening the holdout. I know there's the Barkley Cup week 17, whatever, but I prefer Pollard to Barkley straight up. But if the room wants to give me a cheap Barkley share coming back in the third, I will do it. But this feels like I'm going to be taking a couple of running backs here. Maybe, you know what? I could potentially do a tight end. Maybe I would mix it up and grab like a Mark Andrews share here.
Oh, there goes. So Saquon goes 23 to Donkey Picks. Interesting. Yeah, interesting little room here because I think taking Metcalf was the right move for me. It sucks though because somebody's gonna get a cheap Mahomes on the way back.
Oh wow, Brendan did the Andrews Lamar, which I just don't like that. I see that done. I don't like it. So many teams have that at the 3-4 turn.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be an Andrews team for me, but I guess not so much.
What I am going to take Derrick Henry here. I do have almost double Ramondre Derrick Henry, but my thought is I do think Derrick Henry's ADP is going to start to creep up a little bit more because there's so much more overall confidence in the Titans now that DeAndre's there, now that it means Ryan Tannehill is likely to play the full season. And part of like the worry about Derrick Henry was the systemic risk involved with, Malik Willis or Will Levis. A lot of that has been removed now. And so I'm starting to get a little bit more confidence on Henry. I saw our guy Easy from the Deposit Kingdom took him at pick 15 or 16 yesterday. I do think he could end up there. So I'll grab some shares here while he remains cheap.
The odds of Henry being viable in week 17 and like Tennessee still being a full go and playing competitive games that matter, like that has to have gone up with DeAndre Hopkins signing there. And then also the likelihood of Tannehill being in the mix longer because of that. So I think there's like, I'm with you on Henry, I think being a little bit undervalued just because of the signal that's there now for how this team goes, where like they should be active because they added talent that not a lot of other teams could add at this point.
Yeah, pull up Eric and then Sam's comment. Eric is wrong about this because it's not unique. As Sam points out, I've now seen the Andrews and Lamar with Jefferson a ton of times, and you are sacrificing the equivalent of a third round pick to make that happen. So it's a weaker team, and on top of that, it's not a unique pairing. So it is not an optimal move. I think if you were like towards the end of drafting season, if you're reviewing your combinations, you're like, I just need some more Mark Andrews and Lamar. But the funny thing is people don't do it from like the 3 and the 4 and the 5 hole as much, where you could still get that done. They always do it from the 1 hole because they get worried, oh, I'm not going to be able to get both of them, which is kind of silly because I don't think people are going to reach for Lamar or snipe you on him if you take Andrews at like 21. So if you want to galaxy brain it, start taking it more in the middle of the second round. So you're actually getting it unique. But the Jefferson, Andrews, Lamar is pretty well-worn territory now.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing, Pete, is taking it where you were saying to take it, because I do have a lot of Tyreek, or I have enough Tyreek there to plant that flag. So I could say from my perspective, I've reached for it, but I reach when I have the Miami player to start with Tyreek. And I think I'd rather have that than a Jefferson, Andrews, Lamar that's not correlated for week 17 and also might be more common. So I'm on the boat with you. I'm glad to hear you say that out loud.
Well, I do. And I like it. Like if you're trying to play the week 17 angle, do it with Hill or Waddle, right? Like that's where I think you're actually supercharging that and saying, hey, we're going to do a replay of what was it, their week 3 or week 4 game last year, where it was just this insane game where everyone popped off. Look at all of these wide receivers who have just, this is a way wide receiver heavier room than our last one, Spags.
That's part of why I wanted to get ahead of it, because I was feeling an avalanche coming this way and did feel like I could, start to at least get some players that I don't mind, including Tyreek and Metcalf and Cooper. Obviously, the latter two choices being more prevalent. Let's see. No easy correlations here. I think, Pete, it's time to buy DeAndre Hopkins. I think he's going to drop a little bit further. I feel like he should be in this Kirk Ayuk range, but Hopkins to me at this point in a wide receiver avalanche, I don't have an issue with. Sorry to snipe him on your Tennessee correlation.
You did not snipe me on him. I think I prefer, like, obviously if I need a wide receiver and Burks or someone is there, I'm going to take him. But I kind of, for the way the gauntlet works, And I know over the years, there was some really interesting things where like Derrick Henry and AJ Brown were actually positively correlated on a single game basis. So you could push back on that. But I still think in like the really high 95th percentile outcomes, Derrick Henry is just going nuclear against the Texans, and the passing game isn't getting there quite as much. So I kind of prefer Henry without the wide receivers.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying with that one, because I think over the course of a year, it's probably a pretty good bet to take Henry and Hopkins as like the the two guys who are going to really drive that offense. But for a week 17 specifically, you'd almost want to have a big bet on Houston going back the other way to say like, oh, this is the only way that Henry and Hopkins are going to get there for week 17.
Yeah.
Wow, Deontay at 50. Oof.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out here if I've been surprised that Mixon is hasn't been going earlier. Like I got him at 60 yesterday, but because this room is so avalanche and I've already done my thing, I think I just need to go ahead and reach and get a wide receiver I like. I'm going to just grab JSN, who I've been trying to boost my exposure to a little bit. I have a lot of Godwin. I'm trying to kind of like chill on that in the same way I'm chilling on my Lockett and my Evans. I guess, looking at my exposures, I could have taken Marquise Brown. If I had any kind of correlation tiebreaker there with Philadelphia, I think I would have, but I prefer JSN to Marquise Brown. So went ahead and grabbed my favorite player in that range and trying to stay ahead of this avalanche.
Yeah, I was thinking about reaching for another receiver here, but I do like the Dobbins correlation with Tyreek for week 17. And also, I just didn't want to reach for Godwin or Marquise Brown. I guess Lockett I could have reached for. Yeah, and people are pointing out to Nolan saying, I started the avalanche and then I said I felt an avalanche coming. I think it would have gotten there either way. I just would have been on the bad side of it.
Yeah, the question though, Spags, is like, and because I mean, I deal with this all the time in my draft rooms, and you have to ask yourself, to me, like the effect of the avalanche is, am I actually going to have to make suboptimal wide receiver picks later because I don't have enough? But the counter is you are sacrificing, I think, a lot of projected points and upside when you take DK Metcalf over Tony Pollard, when you take Amari Cooper over Ramondre Stevenson or Josh Jacobs or even Brees Hall. And then the thing I do, Spags, is I think a lot about where I am on the draft board. And, I mentioned in our last draft how around 83, 84, that ends up being like the tipping point where all the wide receivers are dried up in avalanche rooms. So I will say, when I'm picking on the front side of the board and I see, okay, I picked 70 and 75, or you have 69 and 76, I start to say to myself, even in an avalanche room, I might be able to just sneak in the last of those good wide receivers from that spot. And where I tend to reach for wide receivers, if I'm like, I'm going to be looking at Juju Smith-Schuster as my fifth wide receiver at this spot, that's when I start to be like, all right, I'll reach and grab the wide receiver. Whereas here I'm like, okay, I think I can take the two detours and hopefully like two of the wide receivers I have at these specific spots.
I think that makes sense. I view it as a little more of okay, this room is going to be a little bit frothier at the position. So I now get a different configuration of guys that I view as mostly, I wouldn't say a flat tier, but a flat enough tier where I don't think I have a lot of Tyreek with Metcalf, with Cooper, with Hopkins. I probably actually don't have any of that particular foursome. So I think I view it as more of an opportunity to then get different with my usual kind of trying to be radicalized RB and then probably getting walked off of it at some point because of the ADP values or whatever. But I think it's a different approach the way that you're talking about it that I should probably try to weigh a little bit more. For me, it's just like, this is a configuration of four receivers I'd never get. So I think that's what kind of appeals to me.
Yeah, and I do think there is that element. And this goes back to what I was saying though, like where I do think there would be the trap is if you're always trying to get ahead of wide receiver avalanches, and you're always doing that by taking DK Metcalf, who's like the next best. That's where I think you get into trouble, because you're overexposed to a wide receiver who's part of one tier. And then on top of that, there's opportunity cost of who you're passing to get him.
Yeah, no, I could see the way you're saying that for sure. All right, nobody really correlates well with me here. Guess I could take a Dameon Pierce share, but then, let's just take Treylon Burks. I think this is still a player that's going to fall, but I'm panicking a little bit, Pete, and I don't want to take Akers or Pierce that much.
That's fair. Let's see.
You could take Akers.
I want to get more Kyle Pitts. I normally do not take 3 detours away. There's some wide receivers here I like, but hot damn, I want more Kyle Pitts. And this side of the board is where I want to do it, where he's more lined up at ADP. And so we're going to be having to play catch up at wide receiver, but I have a few things that I might be able to do to keep pace. We will see. But yeah, I need more Kyle Pitts, Spags. That's where I'm at.
What's your share of Kyle Pitts right now?
I think it was just slightly over.
Okay.
I'm at 10%. And I would really like to be at like 16 or 17%. And I do get, Quentin Johnston falls here. I think that will be my play. So you got some nice fallers here. Cam Akers, I could build out this bet on the Rams, but I'm just not going to do a 4th detour. I do really think that's a recipe for disaster. So I'll go ahead and get Quentin Johnston for my 2nd draft in a row here. And then we'll get creative.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about taking Dameon Pierce. He now falls back to me, so I will take him here. Akers obviously a slightly higher ADP guy, but I am now making a bet on Tennessee for overall in the season, but also for week 17. So I didn't get Pierce on a Texan stack on Friday. People were actually mad at me for not taking him there. But I think Pierce and Singletary, like I go on, who's going to be there when I want to take him. And there was a falling Madison when I could have taken Pierce. But I feel like Pierce is like nice 75 range. I'll take him at 70. I feel a little bit not great taking Pierce.
Yeah. And it goes, when it really feels good is when you are doing like a true zero RB build, like you are, you need a running back and you get the faller.
Right.
I'm in a spot where it's like, yeah, Dameon Pierce is a nice value. I actually want to get a little bit more Dameon Pierce. Let me see what I'm at right now with him. It's definitely going to be light. I'm not fading him by any means. Yeah, 3.5%. But like if I'm taking 2 running backs early and Kyle Pitts, like I just cannot afford to do that in a wide receiver heavy room. So it's an interesting spot because you tell yourself, I want to get more of these guys, but then you have to ask yourself, how am I actually doing that in practice? Dameon Pierce, it is really in zero RB builds where then he becomes, I think from the middle portion of the board, Dameon Pierce becomes a really nice target when he falls to the 7.
Yeah, and that was, I think, the issue I ran into when I was trying to stack the Texans was I had taken Derrick Henry, and it's like, okay, I don't want to go back to running back for Pierce at that point and, take him again when there's another faller that I can get at that point as well. But people love Pierce. I think that's one of the takes that I'm probably going to be dying on the hill of a little bit. And it sucks because part of the reason I had some good teams last year was Pierce, Walker, and Algier being guys, and I guess James Cook, but probably not quite as much. Like those guys being good, but I think people are just so into Pierce and Walker again this year. And I think there's enough red flags here with both the teams and how they brought guys in the offseason that I don't think they're the bets that normally a rookie who was, good in year 1 going into year 2 would be. Like I think Pierce and Walker are a little bit steamed up just because people are expecting that normal process.
Yeah. Chat pointing out Donkey picks with an interesting draft. Mahomes and Burrow back to back in the 3rd and 4th round. I guess honestly, since then has been doing fine. Anchor Barkley. We'll see. I do think you can salvage some starts like that, right? Like, do I think it's optimal to take those 2 quarterbacks there? No. Can you make it work if you really make up with it with quantity and you build out the game stacks, which right now they're kind of doing with Tony and stuff. So I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm rooting for Donkey picks. I'm rooting for Donkey picks to salvage this.
I think you can make a Burrow Mahomes build work, but it does require both guys being values, and I guess he got that. The issue to me is that he then reached for Deontay Johnson, and it's like, okay, you kind of undid the value you got at the QB position, at least from how I view it. But I like bets on Kadarius Toney, which I feel like I'm on an island for, even though he's still at a solid ADP. People just on social media, people fucking hate Kadarius Toney.
Kadarius, he's a polarizing one. He's like the Anthony Richardson too, right? Where people bag on him, but then drafters are still taking him aggressively.
Yeah, I would agree. All right. So do you have Tua still available here? Not a big discount, but I can take a QB because I have 5 receivers. So I will take a QB here of Tua.
Yeah, I'm probably not. Where's the Waddle drafter? That's the only other thing you could probably look at and see if the Waddle drafter, you had him behind you, so maybe you could push it, but this board is pretty flat right here. I don't really like this spot much at all. All right. Who am I going to take? I guess I'm just going to take a guy I always take when the board gets flat and I don't like it, and that's James Cook. But man, I don't like Isaiah Pacheco, Spags. And I guess you could have said, if I had any correlation stuff, if I had any other Chiefs or Bengals, I don't think it would have been bad. I was hoping that Jamison Williams had fell to me. He did not. And
Jamal Williams at 98.
yeah,
with Kamara to donkey picks.
I know.
Okay.
And now I don't have. Man, I do not like this portion here. I will just grab. I'm gonna play the hits here and grab Sharbs and build out the running backs in this range.
Let's see. Nobody here screaming out to me at this point. I do have a little bit of a bet on Cleveland with Amari Cooper, but I can't stack him up at tight end with Njoku. I am going to take Evan Ingram here falling, I guess, just because I do want to get a tight end in, but really no feel for that one. Donkey Picks really has thrown the ADPs for a loop in this particular.
Donkey Picks, Jamal there, Kamara. Yeah, we'll see. We shall. So Tyler Boyd would have made a ton of sense for Donkey Picks there with the Burrow to get that double stack.
Yeah, I would agree. You mentioned you don't like Pacheco, but you don't like McKinnon either. So you don't like any of the KC running backs?
No. I mean, really? It's what's funny too is that every year too, like you look at the ADPs for the Chiefs running backs, and like they have not hit in I think it was like 3 years. The backfield is just, I think it's still talent driven, right? Like if they would have taken Jonathan Taylor over Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I feel pretty confident that Jonathan Taylor would crush in the Chiefs offense. And I actually think the right running back at the right time will. But yeah, I just think there's so much volatility there. I think they are likely to add one of these veterans. Would not be shocked at all to see a Leonard Fournette sign. Yeah, as AF says here. So I think you're going to get cheaper Pacheco and McKinnon. I think McKinnon is the stuff with McKinnon was weird where he was like free. And then after crushing down the playoffs in what was it, 2021, and then the like market just ignored it. And then he was a really good pick where he's going. And then he just was completely removed from the offense down the stretch. And they turned it over to Pacheco. And the fact that now McKinnon is more expensive than he was the year after his actually good playoff run is so bizarre to me. So I'm more on the side of him being cooked of anything. And I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop with this offense. If we get more of a steady drumbeat on like Deneric Prince, as Chipsy always likes to point out, being an interesting late round flyer or one of these other veteran backs signed there. But I guess my whole thing is I do not think the Chiefs running back story is settled yet.
I still think it's Pacheco. I mean, he has been coming off of a torn labrum, and maybe that's part of the issue too, is that he is injured and you don't want to buy necessarily on a guy coming off of that injury. I know, like, I think there's logic you can make there both. And also, what you talked about with one of Dalvin or Lenny or whatever, like one of the Zeke going there potentially could be that thing that hurts too. But none of that's happened yet. And I think that's where I find an issue with Pacheco falling so much, is that if anything, he looked primed to steal some of McKinnon's work overall. McKinnon, we saw have the massive spike weeks catching passes last year, like you talked about. So I think Pacheco's still worth the bet. Obviously, saying that there's still some risk profile, but they haven't signed those guys yet. And Pacheco's only getting healthier.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think too, like in those 0 RB builds, similar to with Pierce, I think Pacheco as like a first running back or second running back in those builds makes sense. What are you going to do here, Spags?
I'm going to take Nico here. I do think that Brian Robinson would have been an okay pick, but I feel like I can get the cheaper Chicago guys later. And I think just
I was
building
kind
a
of
little
sweating.
More.
I was sweating that you were going to double tap, take Geno to stack up with Metcalf, because I was starting to feel a little queasy about my quarterback options.
I think I'm still going to take Tannehill late, but I guess that is a 3 QB build. Yeah, I could have taken Geno. I think I'm still married to the idea, mostly in my head, of going just Tua and Tannehill. But yeah,
we got
you
some
should have started.
wild takes in the chat today. We got CH could be the best value on the board, and we also have 2020 CH equals 2023 Bijan. The takes are flying today.
Yeah, really. I mean, Bijan, the thing with Bijan is just that he's going to be what Algier was last year, but better, overall. So I think that's the one ding for him. But I don't know. People worried too much about the historical stuff when it's not a perfect analogy ever.
All right, I'm going to do something that feels gross, but I'm basically going to play this Jags wide receivers through the cheaper pieces here. I have Kirk, obviously not going to have Trevor Lawrence on this team, but I'm going to stack it up without the QB and tack on Zay Jones with Kirk.
And I was thinking about taking Robinson with the last pick. He falls again here, so I'll take him 13 picks after ADP and not feel that bad about it. Brian Robinson was used a lot last year, and people have really fallen in love with the Gibson portion of things for no reason besides some occasional quotes that are not even that strong in favor of him.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is the other side of the benefits of what I would call forcing zero RB, how you did. Like, I think the downsides are you get funneled toward the same players and there's opportunity costs on some of the ceiling running backs. But what does happen in these rooms is you get really good value on pieces that make a ton of sense for zero RB builds, because like in your build where you only have 3 running backs, you need some early season production. And Damian Pierce and Brian Robinson are like probably 2 poster boys for guys that we know are going to get a decent amount of carries right out of the gate. So then when you get that at a deal as well, it certainly comes together nicely.
Do you have any worries about Dobbins' ADP, because he's quietly also one of the running back holdouts, but is not, I guess, Jacobs really hasn't suffered and Saquon is starting to suffer a little bit, but it does feel like he's quite like nobody's talking about him, but he is also not in camp or not, participating in camp.
I mean, my issue with the Dobbins thing, and I mean, I know why you did it because you were setting up that mini with Tyreek Hill, but like I prefer Kenneth Walker to J.K. Dobbins by like a pretty decent bit. And so their disparity in ADP, and even in a vacuum, give me Joe Mixon over J.K. Dobbins. So my issue with him is just if I am taking a running back in the scary dead zone, I have other ones I prefer. So when you compound that, I just have not gotten as much Dobbins as I think I would otherwise like. So yeah, that's my issue with him. But I do like Dobbins. I think he could really smash his ADP if things break right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to, the offense changing there a little bit and, a lot more volume in the Georgia running backs under Todd Monken's offense there. So I think Dobbins is in a nice spot, but I think that might be one of the biggest differentiation points we have in our overall portfolios. 1-3-6-1 here. Still don't need to do much for Houston, though. Actually, yeah, I'm going to take Dalton Schultz here. I think this kind of solidifies me at tight end, and I am putting a pretty big game stack here for Houston, Tennessee. So I'll take Schultz and might do a 3 QB build with Stroud and Tannehill.
Let's see. It looks like we will stay out of each other's way then in that regard. Do I just keep hammering Dulcich? I do have my Quentin Johnston mini again, like getting some upside here. This part of the board is fairly flat. I could do receivers, but man, like Rashee Rice just doesn't make it move for me. And I've just kind of already deviated from that path of playing like the Cincy and Chief stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and tack on Dulcich here.
Also, guys, if you are watching live or after the fact, we appreciate it a bunch here. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel. Splash Play on its march to 3,000 subs. Pete on his march to 15,000 subs. So subscribe to both at the same time because they're about equidistant from those goals. And of course, fantasy football all year round here on Splash Play. You'll get me back on Friday doing Spags stacks where I will spin the wheel and draft 2 teams at random based upon what that wheel tells me. But exciting times here, Pete, for both of us, though. It's going to suck when you crush your 15,000 subs and I'm still 500 away here on Splash Play.
What do you mean me, Spags? We're in this together. Come on.
True. Well, no, but, it is still people. I know that I'm the driving force of the subs here, and, I got to be good with that, but I want to keep up. I want to fulfill the dream of a drunk show, Pete, at 15,000 subs and 3,000 subs.
Yeah. So I've So one thing I haven't enjoyed in this specific room is I've tried to like push some quarterbacks a few times. Like I did want to set up like a Daniel Jones potentially and then unlock some late wide receiver options for me. That did not work. And, we have Rodgers sliding here, but I don't have anything going there. So I am going to go ahead and pull the trigger on a slightly early Matthew Stafford. And now I'm wondering, should I have taken Higbee instead of Dolchich and just gotten that double stack? But part of me just like reaching for both Higbee and Stafford there didn't feel good. I end up just doing Stafford. So I'll play it likely as a skinny, although there's late options. But the point is now with Stafford to Cup, I have plenty of Giants wide receivers late that I can kind of build out what I would consider a relatively weak wide receiver room for me.
I think that makes sense. I really thought that you were giving that monologue to talk yourself into taking another share of Rodgers. Like I thought you were building up.
No, that's the thing too. It was the same reason why, like Rashee Rice, I think just like best player for my team in a complete vacuum would probably be a wide receiver there with a little bit of upside. But I think I've learned, as much as I'm a value hound, one thing I've learned a lot from drafting with Sean too is like, I do think making those value hound picks will help your advance rate, would help me get out of this league with a stronger team scooping up that value. But if the team isn't built to finish first out of 16 in week 15 and first out of 16 in week 16 and then have a chance to finish top 10 in week 17, like what's the point? We're drafting a tournament team here. And so obviously with Rodgers, there's backdoor stuff you can do. You can do Conklin and Hardman, and then maybe you take Cedric Tillman or whatever. But it starts to be just like a thinner backdoor bet when I have no big bets on that. So when I don't think there's a lot of difference between, Rodgers and Stafford, and I've already selected Cooper Kupp, it's just like I got to lean into, I need Cooper Kupp to be an absolute smash. And how's he going to do that? Well, it's with Stafford playing decently.
I think that's one of the things too that I've observed again, having people send some more teams in. And I think it's the point of the QB is to decrease the parlay you're making overall. And if you take Rodgers unstacked, then you're kind of reaching for, Tyler Conklin and Michael Carter. It's like Michael Carter and Conklin could even have good years and have spike weeks. It doesn't mean that Aaron Rodgers got there. Aaron Rodgers would get there for the year or even game to game because Garrett Wilson's great, or Garrett Wilson and, Breece Hall combined are great. And I think that's the one thing sometimes people miss with the stacks is like the point isn't just to stack up random guys. It's to stack up the reason that a QB gets there or the reason that a receiver gets there.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm curious to see what you do here. I have a player I want, but I don't think you're going to take him. You're not.
I'm going to take Tyjae Spears here because I do have my Houston, Tennessee. So this is the heaviest Houston, Tennessee stack I've ever had, but I will continue to build it out.
I like Spears there in a 0 RB build for sure. I took DJ Chark. I had taken 2 Jags. I needed a wide receiver. Chark falling past ADP gives me that week 17 correlation. Also gives me the option if I did want to maybe do a Bryce Young later as well. I could add him as a third QB. So DJ Chark, not a guy I take a lot, although this seemed like the perfect spot. And I was talking to Hilo on my show a couple weeks ago, and he really likes that archetype of the boom bust wide receivers. Van Jefferson was a guy we targeted, and I kind of had a blind spot to some of those guys. And so I am, when they logically make sense, values, correlation, outs to quarterback, I am trying to get a little bit more exposure to those guys.
Yeah, I prefer Terrace Marshall to DJ Chark for sure, but they do kind of play the same role. So I think if you're a believer in Carolina's ability to be productive, and that's one of the bets too, Pete, that I'm willing to make this year. I just think the rookies are going to be better each year, and kind of going forward. But what are you going to do here with your pick?
I am debating here. I think what I will start to do, as much as I like all of these later Giants guys, I don't end up with a ton of Hodgins. I'm pretty light on him. So I'm going to use this as a opportunity to get a Hodgins share with my bring back on the Stafford stack.
And I am going to, I believe, get my 6th running back here, go Jeff Wilson's way. So a little bit more correlation with Tua, my Baltimore Miami stack, all of that. Chris asking, is Tua lower ADP QB almost exclusively due to concussions? A real concern, but the offensive weapons when you're top of the league seems like it should be closer to Herbert, not 40 spots later. Pete, I think it is entirely because of the concussion stuff. And I agree, like you shouldn't play your draft portfolio that way. Like that's why I have a lot of Tua. But how do you feel about it? Because it does feel like he should be more expensive if not for that.
I think if you told the market that Tua would play 17 games I think he would be going in the 6th or 7th round, like after Justin Herbert, but right around where Trevor Lawrence is going. And probably he should probably go before Trevor Lawrence if you knew you were getting 17 games from him. So I do really think it's fully concussion based. And just whenever I've talked about Tua being undervalued or talked about the Dolphins offense, the only pushback you get is concussions, going to get hurt, whatever. So I do really think that's solely responsible for his ADP, which makes him one of the most mispriced players, because we do not care about, those, we can't predict injuries. And when he does get hurt, whatever, the team's dead. But when he does stay healthy, which is within the range of outcomes, he's going to beat his draft slot by what, 2-3 rounds. So when you have Hill and Waddle and Tua's there at ADP, he's just an auto click.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I think that's why one of my favorite builds overall has been Tua with AR, because those are two guys that I think can really beat that ADP meaningfully for different reasons. But that's the kind of play to me that I think Tua is one of my favorite QBs overall. And, it bothers me that people view it in that way where it's like, oh, he had concussions. Like there's also helmet technology that's been improved. And there's a randomness of concussions that he's like also learned how to fall. So I don't know what else you could do, Pete, to prevent concussions, but whatever you can do, like Tua's done it as much as you can.
Yeah. I mean, I think people were scared, right? There was legitimate chatter at the end of last season when he was held out, didn't play in their wild card game against the Bills, that he might retire. Like that was the talk. And I think that permeates people's decision making when they're on their clock. They're like, this dude was close to retiring. I don't want to take on that risk in the 9th round, but this is a massive lottery style tournament where if you're not embracing some risk and taking advantage of uncertainty, I don't think you have a chance of winning.
Yeah, no, I'm fully with you on that. And Miami certainly showed more than enough last year for me to want to be there heavily, no matter what configuration that's coming through. Interesting chats here. Chark is a gross pick. Would rather push the chips on him than Marshall. So you took Chark here, Pete. You take Marshall too. Like,
yeah.
Do you agree with that take from Blake here?
Yeah, I agree. They're both gross. I have like 5.8% Marshall and 4.7% Shark. So they're two guys I'm going to be under on, and I'm going to just use them as correlation pieces with Jags players is primarily how I'm going to be playing that.
Yeah, I'm a little more open to the idea of Marshall. I tweeted some of my reasons why for that this week. Of course, still trying to do a fantasy football take every day on my handle. But Marshall, to me, I think is a very similar bet to Chark. The thing is that he's younger and then also hasn't been hurt. And, it's a new regime, though, so we'll see. But what are you going to do with your pick, Pete?
Yeah, I want to keep drafting wide receivers. I kind of know what I'm doing with my last 2 picks. So I'm going to just kind of double up on this Rams-Giants game and take Jalen Hyatt, a guy who's gotten really cheap. I have way more Wan'Dale Robinson than Hyatt, basically when Hyatt was much more expensive. And now I'm kind of balancing it out a little bit more. They're both really cheap. Sometimes they go undrafted in some of these drafts, but this was kind of part of the thesis of grabbing Matthew Stafford, was giving me some green light toward these late round wide receivers as I try to catch up here with quantity after making so many detours early.
And Eric asking the question, when we talk about Carolina receivers, what about Visca? Are you going to have a single share of Visca? You must have one share at this point.
I do have a share. I believe it was one of the first drafts I did with Pat on my channel to kick it off. It might've been opening night, or if not the following week. We did take a Visca share. I was trying to talk him into Terrace Marshall, and he goes, I would take Visca before I took Terrace Marshall. So I was all right.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, Visca, you got to hit a lot of things right. I think Visca, man, if you get positive training camp news and he's a guy that's drafted in less than 1% of Best Ball Mania, maybe that starts to get interesting as like a unique guy. But I'm not there yet with my old.
With all the love for the Debo role, guys. Visca, the original Debo role, many are saying.
Yeah. So interesting. I still think I have 2 options that I could go for this other quarterback. Normally I've been trying to boost my Ritter exposure, but Bryce Young has a big fall here, and I do have the double Jag spring back. So I'm going to go ahead and use this as a chance to get Bryce Young. I got Bryce Young stacked with Chark, and then we got Kirk and Zay coming back. I was prepared to take Desmond Ritter with one of my last picks there to stack him up with Kyle Pitts, because I do like that correlation. But because I have a much bigger game stack with the Jags and the Panthers, I think scooping up the fall on Bryce Young there made some sense.
And I'm taking Tank Dell here because I got sniped on Tank Dell while doing a Texan stack on Friday and took Robert Woods instead. And that's why I'm stacking Texans here, Pete. So I got to get my Tank Dell shares, even though I get the logic for Woods. You take Dell over Woods, right?
Well, it's funny you say that because I had a big Tennessee double stack going on Best Ball Breakfast yesterday where I had Nuke, Burks, and so I was hunting for a Texans wide receiver. John Mechie went in the 13th, and then Robert Woods went like 20 picks ahead of ADP. So I did take Tank Dell. I had told the chat I was going to take a Robert Woods share. That I found Pat's tweet so compelling that I needed to get a Robert Woods, but I do think it depends on like the type of team. So that team was a hyper fragile build where I had started with 3 running backs, where I do think I legitimately needed some of like the projectable volume at wide receiver. And I do think Woods makes sense in those. But if I have a 0 RB build like you do, I want a guy where there's some rookie upside there where he could actually sniff my starting lineup. I think you could push back and say Nathaniel Dell's profile doesn't necessarily have like the huge kind of range of outcomes with just how he's going to be used. But in your build, the 0 RB build, I definitely want Dell over Woods.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And that's something that you taught me, I think, last year, or, cemented in my brain more last year, was the idea of like, and this is not a guy who ended up paying off at all, but like the McKissics versus a Hassan Haskins or Zamir White last year, where it's having that projectable volume, having some ability. If you need a running back and you have a 0 RB portfolio of a lot of rookies, you probably want to add a McKissic on. And I think that's the same thing for receiver too, where if you have a solid base at receiver, you take the upside swing at Dell. But if you have like shitty receivers, then you take Woods.
Yeah, for sure. So we haven't done a good job recapping our teams for the audio listeners here as we head to the 18th round. I guess we could save the full recap for when we are about to finish here. But what are you deciding? You have a 2-6-7-2. Where are you thinking of going? This feels like maybe a 3 quarterback team for you.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take Tannehill here since I do have enough of a bet on Tennessee. Now 3 players with Tajay, with Hopkins, and with Burks. And yeah, I mean, for a week 17 correlation, Pete, I don't run away from that too much 2 QBs from the same game, but especially if I have Tua too, like it just doesn't matter if Houston, Tennessee doesn't really go off. Yeah.
My debate right now is, I do think I'm just going to go I'm going to basically do hyper fragile here at running back. I think I'm going to just stick with 4. Pollard, Henry, James Cook, and Charbonnet. I think you could say maybe this is a 5 running back team, but because I felt weaker at wide receiver and I can complete 2 different double stacks, the decision I have is, do I double stack Stafford or do I double stack Bryce Young? I'm going to double stack Stafford. He just feels to me more like a guy that I want to have 2 pass catchers with, where I think if maybe Bryce Young rushes a little bit more, that maybe the skinny stack works there. But both games where I have 2 bringbacks coming back, I got 2 Giants wide receivers, 2 Jacksonville. So close for me on the tiebreaker there of whether to go Marshall or Tutu. End up going Tutu.
I was hoping you were going to go Puka. I feel like you got to start taking a few Pukas with how much Tutu you take.
I think Puka is a very fun story, but I think Tutu is a much, much better bet. Better prospect. Well, there's just not a lot, like, other than Puka's cool name and like some fun puff pieces. I don't really get it with Puka.
All right, you want to read your team out, Pete, here to give the servicing the audio listeners have been dying for this last hour.
Yeah, I mean, let's see here. All right, so ended up with a 3-4-9-2 build. Geno Smith, Matthew Stafford, Bryce Young at quarterback. My running backs, Tony Pollard, Derrick Henry, James Cook, Zach Charbonnet. Took running backs early and often 4 through the top 100, but then just stopped. Wide receiver, Cooper Kupp, Christian Kirk, JSN, Quentin Johnston, Zay Jones, DJ Chark, Isaiah Hodgins, Jalen Hyatt, Tutu Atwell. Fun thing about my wide receiver room, every single one of these guys is correlated with a week 17 game. So I'm huge on Rams Giants. I'm huge on Jags Panthers. And Seattle, no bring back there, but I do have JSN with Geno. And then also the Quentin Johnston, Greg Dulcich mini. Really the only guy who's not correlated on my team is, I guess, a couple, Tony Pollard, Derrick Henry, and Kyle Pitts. I actually was going to grab Nico too. Like if you went Geno at that spot, I was going to take Nico. And if you went Nico, I was going to take Gino there. But overall, don't mind this team. What did you finish with?
My team here going to be at QB, Tua, CJ Stroud, and Ryan Tannehill going head-to-head. Both have the same bye week, too. Week 7, running back, J.K. Dobbins, Damian Pierce, Brian Robinson, Roshan Johnson, Tyjae Spears, and Jeff Wilson. Some Week 17 correlation here, but not everybody. Receiver, Tyreek, of course, correlating with Tua, DK Metcalf, Amari Cooper, DeAndre Hopkins, Treylon Burks, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell. And a tight end, Evan Ingram and Dalton Schultz. I probably should have gotten a Carolina correlation because I think that was why I took Ingram, was to take one of those guys late, Pete. But built out a unique game. We both built out the least sexy Week 17 games, but I think we built them out pretty adequately.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if you ranked, power ranked them, Rams, Giants, and Panthers, Jags would both be bottom 5. And what was your 2?
Houston, Tennessee would I think also
Houston.
be, yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. Dumpster diving for correlation.
There we go. So those are 2 drafts in the books. Pete, give the people the plugs one more time here. Of course, you are on your march to 15,000 subs and getting dangerously close by the week.
Dangerously. Yeah, this was draft 91. We'll have to see. I assume draft 100 will end up taking place sometime next week. Another fun milestone. We've had some milestones on Splash Play. I think draft number 50, draft number 69, draft 75 was on my channel.
I still have the party favors here just in case.
There you go. So we'll see where draft 100 falls. But yeah, I can't believe that by next week at some point, I will be 2/3 of the way done streaming all of these. This video, the second it finishes, you can leave a comment and that will get you an entry into my $1,500 giveaway. 3 winners, $500 each, win my channel, hits 15K subs. And what did we tell the people we would do a drunk stream, you and me? What's our goal?
It was 15,000 on your channel and then 3,000 here on the Splash Play channel. So we're pretty much equidistant in terms of those milestones. It's just, the rate that Splash Play goes, not going to quite be aligned, but it's going to be close, I think, if we get them both done before the season.
Yeah. And as far as my other stuff, I am going to hop on Pat's anniversary millionaire stream today at 2. I'll be in the Fantasy Life Discord at 3:30. I don't think we're going to have the club today. The Pat draft shifted my schedule around, but those are my main things. Then I'll be back as usual for Best Ball Breakfast on my channel tomorrow at 10 a.m. with Pat and Sean.
Yeah, so follow Pete at Peter Overzet. Of course, make sure to subscribe to this channel. If for some reason you are subscribed to Splash Play and not subscribed on there, follow me at Chris Spags. I'll be back on Friday doing the double header Spag stacks, spinning the wheel there. I think I've got 16 teams left to hit, so we're on pace for that one as well, but appreciate if you guys want to come hang out with me then. And of course, hit the join button down below if you want to join the Splash Play channel and have me review up to 10 of your teams per month. I'm happy to do it and happy to learn from you guys as well with what you're drafting out there, Pete, because a lot of sharp drafters that in your Deposit Kingdom community, especially, that I feel like you've cultivated. And now I get to reap the benefits of actually looking at all their teams.
It is nice. That's a nice perk, even though you did have to walk back your unlimited team reviews there. Yeah, but become a member to the channel and you can send those to Spags in the Splash Play channel within the Deposit Kingdom Discord, which, by the way, if you guys aren't in there, Deposit Kingdom, awesome place to be. All kinds of channels there. The Badge Bros have all the multi-sports going. We got general best ball channels, of course, the Splash Play channel, where Spags is very good at answering your questions if you guys are YouTube members. So hop in the Deposit Kingdom Discord and get better at best ball.
Yeah, lots of like-minded folks in there that'll help you up your games. Go check that out. And of course, go check out Pete's. Go check out the entire Pat stream. Go over there right now. Go check it out. Support our boy. Just celebrating his big day here, July 18th, the day of winners is what we're going to call this one moving forward. Appreciate all you guys hanging out with us. We'll see you guys again soon. Enjoy your weeks. Good luck. Bye.